Hi everyone, it's Molly. I'm from Humble Beginning Ministries, and I have a message for you today about peace and the new year. And I wanted to kind of give you some ideas for what you can do for the new year for resolutions, and also give you some um, advice and inspiration, as well as some verses from the Bible that came to me um, for this message. And I hope that y'all are doing well and having a wonderful holiday season. I know sometimes the holidays are a little stressful for people because they're cooking, they're doing rituals and traditions, they're trying to, they just get busy, or it can also be a sad time of year for a lot of people because they're alone. They don't have anybody. And that's kind of the message about peace, because sometimes we think that peace is only when we're alone, that we only get peace when we're alone, like peace and quiet. But God gives us peace also in the midst of chaos, and He He gives us peace of mind from from our fears. So like last night, I did have a nightmare, and then when I woke up, like I felt a sense of peace because I felt like I wasn't afraid. Like at first I was afraid when I woke up, and then I sat there for a few minutes and prayed, and then I felt peace. So sometimes God gives us peace in different ways than we expect. He gives it when things are chaotic around us and our schedules are busy, and we can have a moment of peace or tranquility even when it's disruptive and you're getting interrupted many times throughout the day. You can still have peace. And I wanted to share about giving as well, because so this was a season of giving, but I think a lot of times people don't realize that giving also gives a sense of peace when we give things that we don't need. For instance, like if we have a lot of clutter in our house, we can give things away, and it'll give us a sense of peace in our mind, because it was like filling up our mind. It was blocking us from receiving. And I just wanted to share a story of friendship from the Bible, and then kind of share about my day, because I feel like it might be helpful for you, and give you some inspiration and ideas for the new year. So I'm going to read a verse from 1 Samuel 18, verses 3 through 5. And it says, And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. And that really shows generosity, because it wasn't like he went out and bought him his own set. He gave him what he had. Sometimes people think that you have to give gifts that, it's like we don't think we can give secondhand gifts because you don't think somebody's going to want your used item. But it's actually, it can show like you care so much to give your own item to somebody. And that's what I wanted to talk about, because for instance, like there's a church in my town that they have a clothing ministry. It's called a Clothing Closet, and they have it at the church, but it's completely free for the community. You can go there once a week, and they let you pick out 10 items for yourself for free. And I've been able to help in the community pick out items for people in need, because sometimes people can't afford to purchase items at the store, or like even Goodwill, because they can't afford all the costs that are involved. And I also wanted to say, like, we have no idea the effect that our gift might give to somebody else. Like, the items that we hoard, for instance, when we give them to somebody in need, we don't know how it's going to impact them. It could help bring them to Jesus. When you give them a t-shirt or a scarf, for instance, like, it could really impact them greatly. So today I went to Goodwill and I purchased some t-shirts, some used t-shirts, and I'm hoping that it'll bless somebody in my community because I listed them, and I'm not really listing them for that much, but one of the shirts was brand new, and it was an Allen West for Governor t-shirt, and it was like organic cotton, and it was brand new. And I mean, somebody donated that, so I think it could help somebody, or somebody that likes him might want the t-shirt. You never know how it's going to impact somebody. I also wanted to say, so if people weren't generous in their giving, like that clothing closet, for instance, it wouldn't be made possible because they run their whole organization, that whole ministry, on giving, like people giving donations to them so that they can give back to the community and help people that otherwise wouldn't be able to have clothes. People often think that their items might be worthless and they throw it in the trash, but one person's junk will be a treasure to somebody else. So I wanted to share a story about junk being treasure because I enjoy thrift shopping. It's one of my passions in life. I've done it since I was pretty young. I used to get a lot of hand-me-downs as a kid, for instance. In the town that I grew up in, my dad he's a minister, and he actually just got, he's going through reordination right now, which is a miracle in his life, and he's going to be the minister of a church in California. But it was interesting because, like, growing up, like, I didn't ever realize how much of a blessing it was. I always liked giving things to my friends. Like, I always gave clothes and toys to my friends that were my best friends. But also, like, our family would receive a lot from the congregation. Like, it wasn't just financial gifts or salary that we got from being in the church. Like, my parents got food, they got clothing, they got all kinds of things that people gave to us, and it meant a lot. It wasn't just like, I wasn't like looking for like brand new stuff. Like, we got bags of clothes and hand-me-downs, and it was really awesome. And I really think that a lot of people, like when I was married and I had my daughter, I would save up her clothes. A lot of times I'd go to I did buy a lot of things from Goodwill, and then also I got a lot of new stuff from her baby shower, but I gave a lot of her clothes to neighbors and people at the church, because people that you never know when somebody's in need. I gave like an entire bag of her clothes to another family that had a little girl, and I think it really meant a lot to her, the woman that I gave it to, and also her daughter. So our generous giving is effective, and it could be a treasure to somebody else. Also, yesterday I did go visit somebody in the community, and when I got there, like, the first thing I noticed was his garage was open, and it was like, there was a lot of clutter and junk, but also garbage. He had like an entire pile of milk cartons, water bottles, like just garbage piled up. And then we talked to him, we gave him some food from the local food pantry, and he said he couldn't invite us into his house because it wasn't clean, and he was a hoarder. And I think, he's older, so I don't think he cares that much. But people don't realize that when you hoard things for yourself, that it's like a barrier from having company over. It's like a wall in between people, and I think it also affects our peace of mind when you have that much clutter. When we buy so much stuff, we accumulate and then never give it to anybody. It's like you don't get the flow. You don't feel the flow of giving or generosity or receiving because it's like something's in the way. And it also blocks us from Jesus. Jesus wants us to give. God loves a cheerful giver, and he sees when we give something very small to somebody. So I would encourage you guys to give of yourselves. If you don't have finances, there's other ways you can give this year. As we start the new year, I would encourage you to clean out your closets, to also donate a bunch of your items to charities or your neighbor or people in need. Don't just donate to like Goodwill if you think that's the only place, but there's so many other opportunities to give things to, like ministries and organizations that give away clothing for free. There's, like, today I drove by in the parking lot of a Goodwill because I donated some stuff there. They have a bin for breast cancer research, and the clothing donations that you drop off there, like clothing and shoes and household items, those get donated to that foundation. There's also a Free Cycle website where you can find things and also donate things for free, and people will come pick them up for you. There's like veterans. I know that they come around sometimes and pick up bags and the pink bags for veterans. Like the options are pretty endless on giving. We can give of our time. We can volunteer. We can clean for somebody. We can give of our time. We can pray for people. There's so much we can do for others. And I just wanted to say, like, you know, Jonathan giving David those gifts, that really opened up their friendship, because you never know how that's gonna affect you. Like, when you, like, I think I wrote down, hold on. So you don't know what that friendship will lead to. Like, so just giving something or giving of your time to somebody, like your neighbor or your friend, it can create a friendship. And the generosity, it could save your life. You never know how that person might affect your life or touch your life. Things start out small, but it matures. That's like the law of nature and how God designed our lives, to start small and then to bear a harvest. So just like Jonathan did for David, like, their friendship started out with him giving, but Jonathan saved David from his father Saul by helping him escape. So that was one example of, like, how just being generous and giving his clothes turned into a friendship, which turned into him helping David save his life. And I also wanted to say, like, so this year, our neighbors, I thought something was really cool. The lady that lives next door brought over a bunch of cookies for my brother, and it was really awesome because I feel like it's like they're more than just a neighbor now. They're friends because they were generous with that gift. And it was something small, and you can do stuff like that for your community, and you never know how it's going to impact you. And have you ever noticed how, like, much freer you feel in a clean space? Giving not only brings us closer to one another, but gives us a sense of peace. So I want you to think about, like, freeing up your space, because I have watched some minimalism videos the past couple of years, and it's like a lot of times people will, like, say, oh, I sold everything in my house and I moved out of the state, or I moved out of the country. I watched this one video of this woman who moved from the US, and her and her family sold everything they had in the home, and they were minimalist, and she had a minimalist YouTube video, and they bought like their dream house in Germany, and their house was it was like free of clutter, and it was just really beautiful. And it was interesting because like they didn't have that many items, and so it's like you feel like a sense of peace when you walk into places and it's free of clutter and free of like piles and hordes of stuff. So also, I wanted to say like, there was something else I wanted to talk about. Like, sometimes we feel like we buy things for the wrong reasons. Sometimes we don't even realize we're accumulating so much stuff. And Jesus is the light of the world, and he wants us to focus on him, not on like accumulating things. And I think a lot of times people are doing it because they don't have Jesus. They feel empty inside. They feel like if they buy this, that somebody will like them more. Or they're like buying things because they feel like that person has it, so they want it for themselves, or just because it's a certain brand or something like that. And I wanted to say, like, we shouldn't judge others because we don't know what that person is going through. Just because you think that person has a nicer car than you, or they have nice clothes, or they go on a nicer vacation than you, or maybe they go on a vacation and you can't afford a vacation, and so you're jealous. But honestly, like, passing judgment on that person for what they have, it like hurts yourself. It's not good for your soul. And I have this verse here from Romans chapter 2 that I'm going to read to you. It says, "You therefore have no excuse. You who pass judgment on someone else for at whatever point you judge another, you are condemning yourself, because you who pass judgment do the same things." And then it says, "God will repay each person according to what they have done." And that's Romans chapter 2, verse 1 through 6. So I just wanted to say, like, you know, it's like, sometimes you think like that person has so much, what could they possibly need? But everybody suffers in certain ways, and a lot of times people don't tell us how they suffer. And I've witnessed, like, I've asked a few people. It's interesting because I've approached a few people and I'm like, hey, like, I'll try to give them a Bible or something. I'm like, hey, can I pray for you? And they say, no, I'm saved, or no, I don't need prayer. There's much people that a lady at HEB told me, she's like, no, I don't need prayer. There's people that have much less than I do that deserve it. But I think that's pride. I think that people, it's like everybody suffers in some way. There's something that we could pray for you about. And maybe if it's not you, maybe it's somebody else in your family or something like that. And so I just wanted to say, like, you don't know what that person is going through. Maybe they're just too embarrassed to tell you what they need. Yesterday, that guy that I was telling you about that was the hoarder, like, he said, oh, you know, my knee is hurting. And, like, we were like, oh, do you want prayer for your knee? And he was like, no, I don't. But, like, it's interesting because, like, I still feel inclined to pray for that person, even though they say they don't need it. What is it going to hurt to pray for them anyway? So I just wanted to suggest that to you. And, as always, like, I just wanted to say this last thing, like, you never know what people need in prayer, but you can always ask for God's will for that person and for Jesus to answer their prayers that they have, because we all do have prayers. We don't always share what they are. And as we close out this, Christmas season and start the new year, I wish you a lot of peace and happiness and joy. Peace of mind too, because I'm going to share a little bit of my testimony now, because I felt like that was what Jesus put on my heart to share, because I feel like my testimony is really special and it's unique. Not a lot of people have gone through what I've gone through. I wanted to say that that's another way we can be generous and have peace this year, because starting out the year with sharing our stories with other people, that was the last thing that I wanted to say, because you never know how sharing something like a story could affect somebody else. It could change the course of their lives. I recently shared my testimony yesterday, and I felt like it really impacted the person's life that I shared it with. So basically, I'll just share a little bit about my testimony. I'm not going to share all of it right now. I'm trying to decide if I want to make a video where I talk about my testimony more in depth, but I'll just share a few things that have happened to me recently that are unique. Like I said, they're unique and special to me, and how God's worked in my life, how Jesus has changed and transformed my life. So one of the things is that he's done recently is he's answered my prayer. I prayed for a really long time. I felt like, I think I started praying in 2019. That was when things got really bad for me. I had a lot of mental health issues. I thought when I first went to the doctor, I thought it was just genetic. Oh, it's my parents on my mom's side, that side of the family had mental illness, a history of mental illness. My father was diagnosed with depression. So I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And then that was in 2018 or 2019. And then I was hospitalized for it. And that's how low I had gotten. I was admitted to a mental hospital a couple of times in 2020. And then I was put on lots of medication for the hallucinations I experienced, psychosis. I witnessed a lot of things in my youth and then in my teenage years, and I've also recently found out, in I think May of this year, that I also had PTSD. And so from that trauma that I experienced. So I had a lot of mental health issues. I was admitted. One of the times was really bad. I actually, because of my psychosis, it was like I would wander around. I just would take off from my house and I would wander around. And it was kind of like aimless wandering. And I didn't really know where I was. It was like I lost. There was a couple times where I blacked out and I lost consciousness. There was just a lot of bad things that happened to me during the times that I had psychosis. I had hallucinations. I was seeing things and I was hearing voices. I had all kinds of just a lot of bad things. So it wasn't just the depression and the mania that comes with bipolar disorder, but it was almost like schizophrenia, that's it was almost like, I don't know if I was misdiagnosed, but they told me I had bipolar with hallucinations. That's how severe my mental illness was. And so during that period of time, I went through a lot of suffering. I prayed for healing because I didn't want to take medication. I actually was hospitalized because I refused to take medication for a while. So I went off of, they put me on medicine and I got out of the hospital and I went off of the medication. At times during the hospitalizations, I would spit the medication out. I wouldn't take it. And I felt like Jesus was healing me. So I was told a few times, you are healed. You don't need to take the medicine anymore. So that happened. And then I also, like I said, I would wander around. Like that happened a couple times. And I think in 2020 was one of the worst things that happened to me because I I took off in a car that was my mom's, and I drove to Houston, and then I was like, I went to a restaurant, I met some people at a mall. I just remember doing some stuff that just didn't really make a lot of sense. I made some videos. I said I was gonna run. I was like, I had it in my mind that I was gonna run for like the U.S. government, like the office, for like a political office. I just did a lot of weird, random things. And then so that I was in Houston, I like picked up a guy at a hotel, and I was like, "Oh, do you need a ride?" And he was like, "Yeah, I need a ride." Like he was waiting for a ride, and I was like, "I'll give you a ride." And I gave him to a ride, and I went out to dinner with him, and I tried to help him. I think he was just like, "This is weird. Why is she helping me?" But that, stuff like, I was doing kind of dangerous stuff, like just talking to strangers, picking people up off the road, just making a lot of weird videos and posting stuff on social media. I think a lot of people were concerned about me, and I'm just telling you because some of the stuff that happened to me it was just so weird and out of the norm. And I don't think a lot of people talk that much about bipolar disorder in that depth because people don't I don't think that many people experience psychosis in that way. Maybe they do. I haven't really heard very many. I was a part of some social media groups that were about bipolar disorder, but nobody ever talked about psychosis like you make bad decisions, like you are so confused that you make decisions that make absolutely no sense, and you'll just you'll hear a voice and it'll tell you to do something, and sometimes you follow through with it when you have hallucinations. So I don't know very many. I never talked with anybody that actually had bipolar with hallucinations. But that's why I think my testimony is so special, though, because I have been healed, and I don't take medication anymore, but I don't have the highs and lows anymore. Like, Jesus literally healed me from my mental illness. I know that I'm healed, and I haven't been on medication for over a month now. I haven't had any problems. I didn't have any problems going off the medication that I was on. I took some antipsychotics for quite a while. But sometimes the other thing I want to say is one of the reasons I didn't want to take medication is because the side effects are so bad. The side effects almost were worse than the mental illness. So the side effects and sometimes included suicidal thoughts, anxiety, more depression. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, I gained 40 pounds on one of the medications that I took. And I also, let me see what else. I actually had physical side effects that were really terrible. Like, I think, the start of kidney failure because of the lithium that I was taking at one point. So I did take medication for a long period of time, even though I went off of it a few times. But my doctor kept switching me. She would put me on something and then she'd take me off because I think it was like a extended release lithium that she put me on. And it basically, made me have really bad side effects. Like, I was having to use the restroom, every 5 minutes. That's how bad it was. So I just prayed for a long time, and I didn't think God was going to answer my prayers that I would be healed. Because I had to convince, I was, worried about my family. They were forcing me to take medication that I didn't want to take. I had, a lot of problems with my family where my mom would force me and say, you're not taking your medication, and she would accuse me, and a lot of times, she would aggravate me to the point where I would get angry, and she would make my mental illness exacerbated. And so in order for me to have been healed of my mental illness, I actually had to go through a deliverance process. I had to be delivered. I believed that I was being oppressed by demons, and that's why I was hearing these voices and having these hallucinations. So it's really important that the people that you're surrounded with, because I was watching a video by Mike Signorelli, who is a deliverance pastor, and he talks about the people that God removes from your life. They may actually be a cause of the demons because they've opened the door to evil. And I do believe that happened to me. I believe that the people that I was surrounded with were toxic, and they were opening the door for the demons to enter and give the devil a foothold in my life. Once I was delivered and had the healing, my brother prayed a prayer of healing over me and laid hands on me, and then he anointed me with oil. I was able to have a clear head. I had one night after I was delivered that one night, my experience was so surreal. I stayed up for over 24 hours while Jesus spoke to me, and like I said, I wasn't able to sleep for like 36 hours. At first I thought I was having a manic episode, but I realized that it was my deliverance. I was able to, after that, I was clear-headed, and I was able to sleep perfectly since that time. I didn't have the nightmares like I was having. I also want to share about another experience. I've had quite a few hospitalizations, even one this past year. I'm going to talk about the one that I had in August. It was a really traumatic experience for me, and it happened, and I think it happened for a reason, so that I could be delivered. What happened was, I shared this testimony yesterday, and I felt like it was really powerful. I had found out that I had PTSD in May, and then in August, I was hospitalized again I wasn't really having any problems, but I was living in willful sin, and I was lying, and I said, I just wanted out of my situation so bad where I was living, that I was like, please I would rather be homeless than to live where I'm living right now. That's how bad it was. The situation was so terrible. And so I got hospitalized. I went to a hospital. I had insurance, and I went to the mental hospital in Round Rock. And I started having like nightmares and stuff while I was there, and it was traumatic for me. And so I told the doctor, can you prescribe me something for my nightmares that I'm having? And what he did, what happened was, I was taking like numerous medications, and I feel like there was some things he wasn't really paying attention to, but he was like, okay, I'll prescribe you one. But it's possible, he's like, in other people, it has made them pass out before if you get up too quickly. I just want you to be aware that there's been numerous people that have fallen on this medication because they got up too quickly. And I was like, oh, that's fine, I want to try it because I'm having so much PTSD. And it wasn't really a fine, I was just more like, I consented. I was like, okay, I'll try it. And so he put me on it, and then within 2 nights, he increased it really fast. Like, he increased the dosage, because he was like, oh, is it working? And I was like, no, it's not working. So he increased the dosage. I don't remember the milligrams or anything like that, but it was pretty fast, and I don't think he was supposed to increase it that fast. But what happened was, one night, I got up at like 4 o'clock in the morning after taking it, and I had to go to the bathroom. And I went to the bathroom. I got on the toilet. I sat down. And then I was like, I felt kind of dizzy, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I got up and I started walking back towards the bed to lay down. And it was like all of a sudden I just lost consciousness completely. It was like nothing I've ever experienced before. It wasn't even like I had never experienced this kind of side effect from medication, but I completely lost consciousness. I thought I was gonna die. That's what it felt like. And I might have died, I don't know. So I lost consciousness and I fell flat on my face onto the floor. I hit my head on the concrete floor and I smashed the top of my teeth. There was like blood all the way down my teeth. My lip, if you can see, I have a bulge right here. The lip was completely split open. Blood everywhere. And then I thought I broke my hand, but I just broke a pinky. I broke my pinky on my right hand. And it was weird because, so my roommate at the time heard what happened. She heard me fall. And then she's like, oh, honey, just wait. I'm going to go get somebody. And so she went and got one of the nurses. The nurse, and she's like, oh my God, I'm going to go get the house supervisor. So she found me on the floor and turned me over and was like, oh my God. And so she went and got the supervisor and he came and they were like freaking out and they picked me up off the ground and put me on the bed. And they go, do you need to go to the ER? I think you should go to the ER. And I said, no, I don't need to go to the ER. I'm fine. And the house supervisor looked at my lip. He goes, no, you need stitches in your lip. And I was very scared and I was like, oh no. And they took I forgot to say, they took my blood pressure. And I think that's when she freaked out because my blood pressure had dropped so low. So what they did is they rushed me to the emergency room and they took me to a local hospital and brought me to the ER by ambulance. And I think the paramedics were kind of freaked out because I didn't realize it, but my blood pressure was really low. So the medication had dropped my blood pressure. I believe it was below 50 on the bottom. I don't know very much about medicine, but it was really low, extremely low. And so what happened was I sat in the ER with one of the nurses from the mental hospital. She was there. And then what was really interesting was while I was waiting there was a man next to me and he was screaming. He was swearing. He was flipping out. Like I've never heard anybody scream or flip out at nurses or doctors in my life. I've been to hospitals many times. I've been in the ER a lot. I've given birth 3 times. I've visited a lot of people. I've gone with a lot of people to the hospital. I've never experienced what I saw or what I went through that night. So what happened was the man had, this was while I was in the trauma unit at the ER. He was next to me and there was like a curtain in between us. He was screaming bloody murder. He was swearing every cuss word possible at the nurses and doctors. And I guess what happened was he had sliced his arm open and was suicidal. He was saying that his girlfriend left him and somebody had just dropped him off there. I found out later he was hopped up on cocaine and alcohol and had basically tried to kill himself. He was screaming at them. He didn't want them to operate on him or anything like that. And what they ended up doing, they found a bunch of drugs on him. So I guess he was a drug dealer too. So they found a bunch of narcotics on him and they were going to arrest him. They called the police on him, and because they basically, what they did was they gave him a sedative so that he would calm down, and then they called the police and they were going to arrest him. So that happened to me. So I was kind of freaking out about it, because I was like, what is going on? This is like, I had a trauma, but then it was almost like it was worse because I was listening to this man, and it was traumatizing me by listening to him. And then I told the nurse that was sitting next to me, I said, I'm scared, because the doctor came by and he was like, you're going to have 8 stitches in your lip. It was that bad. And I was like really scared. I was like, I'm scared. She's like, it's going to be okay. And I was like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my teeth. And she's like, no, your teeth will come. You're going to be fine. You're not going to lose your teeth. They'll tighten back up. Because she had, I guess she had also been a paramedic before she went into psychiatric nursing. So she was like comforting me the whole time, even though there was so much going on. And so what happened, what they did was they gave me a shot of lidocaine in the lip, which was probably the worst part. And then he stitched my lip up. And once he stitched my lip up, he was like, okay, it's done or whatever. And I said, thank you so much for fixing me. I was just like so grateful that I was like, I felt a sense of peace. I was like, okay, like, even if I lose my teeth, I'm going to be okay. And then they put a cast on me. And I was like, okay, so I'm fine. I'm going to walk out of here because I have, my lip was fixed and I got the cast on my arm. He's like, yeah, you're going to have to go to an orthopedic doctor in a few weeks to have your pinky looked at. And I was like, okay. And I thought I was going to walk out of there, but apparently the medication that the doctor gave me had, like, at the hospital, the one for the nightmares, it, basically what it did was it dropped my blood pressure so low, and that's what made me pass out and lose consciousness. So, the doctor's like, we're going to keep you overnight, for observation because your blood pressure is so low. So I ended up having to spend the night in ICU. And it was interesting. I had no idea this was going to happen to me. I thought I was just going to spend a usual trip to the mental hospital because I had been so many times. But this traumatic thing happened and it took me out of the mental hospital. And after that experience, I was like, I am never going back to a mental hospital. I'm done. I was like, I would rather, just suffer. And I was like, I'm never going back to a mental hospital. I almost died. And while I was in the ICU, a minister came to me, a chaplain that worked in the hospital, and he came into my room at ICU, and he said, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm the chaplain at the hospital, and I was wondering how you were doing, and he was really kind to me, and I was really embarrassed because it was, like, not pretty. It was just gross. I have pictures, I'm not going to share them, but it was bad. I looked beaten up. And he said, is there anything I can pray for you about? And I said, well, actually, yeah, there is. I was like, I'm actually a minister's daughter, and I'm a Christian, but I'm really angry with God right now for what he's done to me. I said, I feel like I've kind of turned my back on God, and I don't really understand why he's done certain things in my life. He took my children away from me, and they moved out of state, and I'm really angry with God. I don't really see that there's a plan for my life. And sorry, I'm getting kind of emotional. I told him that, and he said, Jesus loves you, and God does have a plan for your life, and I'm going to pray for you so that you can see God's plan for your life. And, he prayed for healing for me. And he's like, I'm going to pray for your family. And so he prayed for me, and I think that was a turning point in my life. If he hadn't prayed for me, if I hadn't had that fall and met him, I might have continued down a bad road. And, that's what I mean about deliverance and prayer. Because if you have somebody pray for you, you never know how your life might turn out. How God will reveal himself to you, and you never know the reason for that accident. At the time, I was concerned. I was like, I'm going to sue this hospital. I'm going to sue this doctor, blah, blah, blah. I was so angry. But I completely feel like that bad trauma happened to me for a reason, because it was the beginning of me saying, you know what? I declare I am never going to go back to a psychiatric hospital. And I am going to get healing. So I believed it. I believed that I was going to get healing. And so I'll culminate this to say, it's getting kind of long here. I don't want to go on and on, but I just wanted to say that, Jesus did provide healing for me. I haven't had any episodes or mental illness ever since I've been delivered. And I'm no longer on medication, and that's a miracle. I feel like God worked a miracle in my life, and he still has promises for me, and I'm excited about my life now. I feel like the Holy Spirit is working through me and is in me, and Jesus is in my heart. And if Jesus can heal me of mental illness, what else can he do for you? He wants to work promises and miracles in your life. God has promises for you. He wants you to be obedient so that you can receive those promises. And I hope that my testimony today, a part of it, I have a long story, a long history that I can tell you. And I do plan on writing a novel about my life and my testimony, and as well as how God's worked in my life. But that's just the short version of what's happened to me recently, and I hope that it touched you in some way, and it gives you inspiration to be generous, to pray for people's healing, to be a witness to others, and give your testimonies and be generous with your time and your sharing and telling people stories about your life so that you can uplift them. Again, I hope you guys have a great new year. Sometimes, I'm led down a certain rabbit hole, but, you never know why I gave this testimony tonight. I don't know if anybody will even watch this, but maybe they will, and maybe it'll be inspirational to you. Have a great night. Bye.